Hello, this is my story, a drama-filled journey I never thought I'd have to endure. My name is Harlon Creed, a former Marine living in Asheville, North Carolina, where money and prestige always go hand in hand. Today, I'll tell you about the worst day of my life, the day I buried my father only to be betrayed by my wife and children right at the cemetery. But this isn't just a tale of betrayal. It's about how I fought to reclaim what belonged to my family step by step with truth as my weapon. Buckle up because this story will keep you glued to the screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I promise you'll want to see this through to the last second. That day began with a light drizzle, as if the sky was weeping for my father, Ernie Creed. He was a legend in Asheville, a man who built a real estate empire from nothing with a simple philosophy: work hard and own your actions. As his mahogany coffin was lowered into the ground, I stood there in a sharp black suit, not feeling grief, but the cold resolve forged by 3 tours in Afghanistan. I stepped up to say a few words, not to mourn, but to remind everyone of my father's legacy, one built not on promises, but on what he left behind, solid, unbreakable. But then, just as I finished, my wife Belle approached. She was as beautiful as ever. Auburn hair, piercing green eyes, a black dress hugging her elegant frame. I once thought she was my greatest victory, but that day I realized she was my costliest mistake. Without a word of comfort, she handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a divorce filing submitted just 3 days earlier before my father was even buried. Belle looked at me, her voice as cold as when she discussed losing stocks. "The assets are mine, Harlan. The prenup had an expiration clause 7 years, and I get half of what was earned during that time. Your father's estate, it was transferred to the family trust while we were married." Before I could respond, my 17-year-old daughter, Romy, stepped forward, her eyes defiant. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling but sharp, "we're changing our last name to Weller. Knox is the real father to us, not you." My 15-year-old son, Darian, stood beside her, eyes glued to his phone, but I caught him glancing at me as if weighing something. Knox Weller, the motivational speaker Belle was now with, had stolen not just my wife, but my children. I only nodded, unshaken. "Your choice," I said. Belle smirked as if she'd won the world. "You're not invited to the reception after the funeral, Harlan. The house is mine now." Watching them leave, I felt my entire life, wife, kids, legacy dissolve in the rain. But I'm not the type to give up. I called Connie Slate, my father's lawyer for nearly 3 decades. "Connie, we need to meet, tonight." As I drove past the Creed mansion, a grand stone house with a wide porch where I grew up, I saw lights in rooms that no longer belonged to me. My phone buzzed. It was Knox, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "Buddy, I know today's tough, but we need to talk like men." He rambled about Belle needing love, the kids needing stability. I cut him off. "You provide her a lifestyle, not a family." I hung up, done with his lies. That night at Connie's office in downtown Asheville, I began to see light. She spread out stacks of documents explaining how Belle had planned this for years. "She filed for divorce right after your father entered the nursing home. The asset transfers started a week earlier." I scanned the papers: the main house, the downtown office building, 3 rental properties, and a major stake in Creed Development, all manipulated into Belle's control thanks to the prenup clause and North Carolina's asset division laws. But what stunned me was how she did it. Romy and Darian had testified in court that I was emotionally abusive, cold, controlling. Not violent, but enough to convince a judge to grant Belle temporary control. I felt stabbed in the back, but Connie wasn't done. She pulled a wax-sealed envelope from her drawer. "Your father foresaw this, Harlan, 15 years ago." Inside was his original will from 2010, with a clear clause: if any family member abandoned the Creed name or acted against the estate's interests, they'd lose all inheritance rights. "Everything would go to me. Your father's later will superseded this," Connie said, "but it never formally canceled it. If we can prove Belle's fraud, this will hold." From that moment, I knew what I had to do. Not fight in court where Belle could buy her way out. I'd strike from the shadows, let her think she'd won. I moved into the guest house on the edge of the property, a modest place with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Everything I owned now fit in 200 square feet, but I didn't need luxury. I needed focus. My phone was filled with missed calls from Belle and Knox, texts I deleted unread. Only one email from my sister Opal stood out with the subject: "What the hell is going on?" I called her back and she didn't mince words. Belle's telling the whole town you're bankrupt and homeless. Knox is posting about new beginnings on social media. What's your move? Opal 38 ran the biggest construction company in Western North Carolina and had no patience for deceit. She was the only one who'd ever confronted Belle head-on. I said, "Let them think they've won." Opal wasn't thrilled, but she knew me. "What do you need information?" I replied, "Financial records proof of fraud if it's there." She growled, "It's there. I've been tracking Belle's spending for 2 years, designer bags more expensive than trucks, Knox's coaching business, with no real client's artwork appearing and disappearing from the house." I told her, "Can you prove it? Give me a week." That night, I opened my laptop and started digging. Knox's financials showed he was a professional con man. His Weller Enterprises was a pyramid scheme luring investors with empty promises of authentic leadership experiences. Belle was more complex. She bought paintings through a gallery in Charlotte, sold them to private collectors for cash, no taxes, no trace. Dirty money. I noted everything, every piece of her game. Then my phone rang. "Mr. Creed, this is Detective Mills, Asheville Police Department. We need to talk about some irregularities in your father's estate documents." I smiled for the first time in days. Someone had been sloppy forging notary signatures for the asset transfers. I knew this was my opening. The guest house became my command center. I cleared the dining table, spreading out 20 years of family financials, legal documents, business correspondence. 3 whiteboards covered one wall, mapping connections between bank accounts, asset transfers, and shady deals. Detective Mills stopped by that morning asking about the forged signatures. I showed him what I'd found, proof of how reckless Belle and Knox had been. My laptop pinged an encrypted message from Connie. "Found the smoking gun. Meet me at 2 p.m. While reviewing my father's personal letters, I realized he'd suspected Belle for years. His handwritten notes over the past 5 years were filled with unease warnings about protecting the legacy, about predators. One letter from 18 months ago had a single underlined sentence: "She's playing a long game." My phone buzzed. Opal called, no pleasantries. Got the bank records. Knox borrowed $600,000 3 months ago using the mansion as collateral. Money flowed into Weller Enterprises, which doesn't exist. She went on Belle, bought art on credit, sold it for cash, no taxes. And that Europe trip last year, she billed $30,000 to the family trust, called it cultural research. I added to the whiteboard. Belle and Knox's financial crime web was bigger than I'd thought. At 2 p.m., I met Connie. She looked grim, sliding a folder across the table. "Your father documented everything, every conversation with Belle about money, every account access request, every suspicious transaction." I opened the folder, 60 pages of my father's handwritten notes, each dated and signed. He knew Belle was stealing, but he didn't act immediately, fearing it would destroy the family. Instead, he waited, planned. Connie handed me another document, a codicil to the original will, signed 2 weeks before my father died. It stated that any family member involved in financial fraud would forfeit all estate rights. My father had set a trap, and Belle had walked into it. Opal came to the guest house that night, bringing a box of financial records and a bottle of bourbon. She looked at my evidence board, nodding. "You should have been a detective, not a Marine." We dug deeper. Knox used the mansion's equity to fund leadership experience sales in 3 states, but it was just a pyramid scheme. He lured coaches to pay for non-existent training materials. Then Connie called, voice tense. "Belle filed for emergency custody, claiming you're unstable, dangerous based on your military record and substandard living conditions." I looked around the guest house, clean, functional, but smaller than the mansion's wine cellar. The hearing was set for the next morning. I went representing myself, bringing financials proving my ability to provide and letters from military commanders. The judge issued a neutral ruling, supervised visitation, pending a psych evaluation. Outside court, Romy confronted me, voice shaking with anger. "Are you happy now you're destroying our family?" I replied. "Your family was destroyed when your mother decided to steal it." I told her about Knox's $600,000 loan, the art scam, the trust fund money. Romy hesitated, but Knox appeared, arm around her, voice syrupy. "Cool it, buddy." I stared him down. "The FBI sees financial fraud differently than you do." His face paled. That night, I attended Romy's art show funded by Belle's shady cultural trust. Her paintings were talented but unfocused, priced exorbitantly thanks to Belle's connections. Romy approached me. "Why are you even here?" "Because I always protect what's mine," I said. She searched my face for emotion I didn't show. "Do you even feel anything? Don't you care that we hate you?" I replied. "I care that you're being lied to, used as a weapon against your own family, and you'll have to live with the consequences of that choice." On Thursday, Connie filed an injunction freezing all assets tied to my father's original trust. Belle's lawyer called immediately offering to negotiate. I refused. My wife should have thought of that before committing a string of felonies. Auditors arrived at the mansion that afternoon reviewing every transaction from the past 2 years. Knox tried to charm them with coffee and stories about the house's history, but they ignored him. I watched from the guest house, seeing Knox panic, making 17 calls in 2 hours. Belle disappeared for 3 hours, returning with shopping bags she was trying to convert assets to cash. Darian called me that night, voice anxious, mom's crying. "Knox is talking about a business trip. What's happening?" I said Knox is running. "Ask your mother." He hesitated. "Mom says you're destroying us. I'm saving the family's name," I replied. "You threw it away, but it's still worth saving." Belle's housewarming party happened Saturday night, a lavish display of wealth with 200 elite guests. I hired a courier arriving as appetizers were served. He had Belle sign for a manila envelope. She opened it, face ashen. Knox snatched the papers, a cease and desist order on the Creed Trust, a trust violation notice, a civil suit for $1.4 million in fraud, a subpoena for forged signatures, and a referral to the FBI for money laundering. Guests' whispered phones emerged, news spread on social media. Knox tried to play it cool, calling it a misunderstanding, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Mrs. Patterson, Asheville's gossip queen, asked Belle, "Is everything okay?" Belle forced a smile. "Just a minor legal issue." I walked in still in the black suit from the funeral. "The FBI will be here Monday," I said. "They're not invited, but they're coming." Knox tried to intervene. "Don't make a scene in front of friends." "Friends I shot back. They're your victims. Half of them invested in your pyramid scheme." I turned to Mr. Davidson, owner of 3 car dealerships. "That Weller Enterprises deal. Knox sold you for $50,000. It doesn't exist." Davidson's face turned red. The party dissolved in chaos. That night, I found Belle alone in the mansion's living room, surrounded by legal documents. "I did love you once," she said, not looking up. "No," I replied. "You loved what I represented." I went to my father's study, packing irreplaceable books. Knox vanished Sunday, leaving a closet full of expensive suits and a note handling business in Arizona. "Back soon. Love you." Belle called him 17 times, all to voicemail. By Tuesday, rumors swept Asheville. Knox was spotted at Charlotte Airport with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to Phoenix. His company website was wiped clean. Belle sat in the mansion surrounded by unpaid bills and frozen accounts. The bank demanded immediate repayment of Knox's $600,000 loan, threatening foreclosure. Her lawyer called. "She has 30 days, maybe less." Thursday, a moving truck arrived. Belle hired a cheap company far from the luxury services she once used. Romy and Darian helped load boxes, looking more confused than angry. Darian asked her, "Where are we going?" Belle replied, "I have friends in Charlotte. We'll stay there temporarily." But I knew she was lying. Her friends stopped answering calls as news of the investigation spread. Darian emailed me Friday night, "Dad, I didn't know about the money stuff. I thought you didn't care about us. Knox said you were too proud to show feelings, but I think he lied. I don't know what to believe anymore." "Can we talk?" I replied, Saturday, 2 p.m. guest house. He showed up on time on an old bike. "Mom says you're destroying the family he started." I said, "Your family was destroyed when you chose a different one. But we can fix it." Darian flushed. "You'll abandon us over one mistake. I'll let you live with the consequences," I said. "Your mother stole your grandfather's legacy. Knox conned dozens of investors. You chose to stand with criminals. That's truth, not feelings." He was quiet, then asked, "What about college? Can I still go?" Your grandfather's original will has an education trust for grandkids if they maintain academic and moral standards, I said. You threw away the name, but blood's still blood. His eyes lit up. What do I have to do? Graduate, stay out of trouble. Prove you understand what family means. Sunday, Romy showed up unannounced, her car stuffed with art supplies and suitcases. I need to stay here, she said. Mom's in a one-bedroom apartment, no room, I replied. You should have thought of that before choosing Weller over Creed, Romy broke down. I was only 17. I trusted Mom. You believed what you wanted to, I said. She sobbed. Don't you love me? I'm disappointed, I replied. I'm angry you were so easily manipulated, and I'm sorry you have to learn the hard lesson that actions have consequences. Romy left sitting in her car for 20 minutes before driving off. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in November. Belle arrived in a borrowed suit, looking desperate. Knox was arrested in Las Vegas 3 days earlier trying to start a new pyramid scheme. He agreed to testify against Belle for a reduced sentence. Connie presented evidence like a surgeon financials showing theft-forged documents with Belle's signature, Knox's testimony detailing their plot to seize the Creed estate. Belle's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim, but the evidence was overwhelming. Belle collapsed on the witness stand. I just wanted security for my kids. Connie countered. You wanted luxury for yourself. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all charges. The judge ordered full restitution to victims' forfeiture of fraudulently gained assets and 2 years in federal prison. The mansion was sold to cover damages. The kids' education trust, protected in the original will, was managed by me until they turned 25. Spring came, and the mansion was sold to a California tech CEO turned into a meditation retreat. Belle was released after 8 months, moving to a halfway house in Charlotte, working as a server at events she once attended as a VIP. Romy sent a graduation card in June. She earned an art scholarship to UNC. Darian called that week I'm enlisting. Navy. I get what you meant about consequences. Mom destroyed everything out of greed. Knox used us because we were stupid. I want to earn the Creed name back. I replied, I'll be there when you graduate boot camp. In October, I dedicated the new Creed Foundation building a center for veterans and young entrepreneurs. Darian in navy dress blues nodded to me from the crowd, a gesture of respect. Romy, studying in Europe, sent a card. Maybe one day I'll understand what you were trying to teach. I drove to the cemetery, standing at my father's grave. The legacy's safe, I said. It cost more than we thought, but it's safe. A cold wind carried the scent of winter. I knew the Creed name would endure, rebuilt generation by those who understood legacy is a privilege, not a right. Justice isn't forgiveness. Justice is consequences. I kept fighting not just for my father, but for myself. When Darian graduated boot camp, I stood there watching him become a man carrying the Creed name with pride. Romy sent a painting from Europe, an abstract portrait of our family, flawed but hopeful. Belle called once apologizing, but I didn't answer. She had to live with her choices as I lived with mine. Picking up from the moment I stood at my father's grave, feeling the cold wind carry the scent of winter. I knew my story wasn't over. Consequences, as my father always said, are a harsh teacher, and I was about to face new lessons, twists. Even a man like me, a Marine trained to anticipate every scenario, couldn't predict. Folks, if you've come this far with me, get ready because the story is about to get more dramatic than ever. Don't look away because what's coming will leave you speechless. That winter was colder than any in Asheville, as if nature mirrored my life's turmoil. I returned to the guest house, now my fortress, and began rebuilding. The Creed Foundation, with its gleaming new downtown building, was my passion, but I knew Belle and Knox, though defeated, weren't my only threats. One morning, while reviewing the foundation's financials, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered, and the voice on the other end froze me. Harlon, it's Romy. Her voice trembled, no longer defiant. I need to see you. It's important. I agreed to meet Romy at a small downtown Asheville coffee shop where locals gathered to gossip and sip Southern-style pour-over coffee. When I arrived, Romy was there wearing an old sweater and scuffed boots, no longer the haughty girl from the Creed mansion. She looked at me, eyes red. I found something, she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. I took it from Mom's study before she moved. You need to see it. I plugged the USB into my laptop right there, and what came up made my blood boil. It was a series of emails between Belle and someone called Mr. V, not Knox, but another shadowy figure. The emails discussed a backup plan, an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, where Belle had funneled millions from the family trust before the assets were frozen. But the real shock was the last line in one email. If Knox fails, we activate Phase 2. Harlon will never know. I looked at Romy, keeping my voice steady. How long have you known about this? She lowered her head. I found it last week, cleaning out Mom's place. I didn't know what to do. I'm scared she'll do something worse. I felt a spark of hope. Romy, though she'd turned her back on me, was now choosing truth. But I also realized Belle wasn't done. She was playing a bigger game, and I'd only scratched the surface. I called Connie immediately, telling her to check the Cayman account. Harlon, if this is real, Connie said, we're talking international money laundering. The FBI will jump on this. While Connie dug, I got a text from Darian at Navy boot camp. Dad, I heard about Mom from a friend. Is it true she's hiding money overseas? I replied briefly, I'm handling it. Focus on training. But I knew this would hit him hard. Darian was trying to rebuild his life, and every time Belle caused trouble, it was a knife to his trust. Days later, Connie called back voice tense, Harlon, the Cayman account is real. $3 million funneled through shell companies. But here's the worst part, the man behind Mr. V is Vincent Moretti, a New York financial broker with a history of dealing with crime families. Belle didn't just scam you, she's playing with dangerous people. A chill ran down my spine. Vincent Moretti wasn't Knox, he wasn't a cheap con man. If Belle was tied to him, she wasn't just threatening my assets, but my kids' safety. I decided to confront her directly. I flew to Charlotte, where Belle was living in a halfway house serving drinks at lavish events she once attended as a VIP. I found her at a wedding carrying a tray of champagne, looking haggard but still wearing her fake smile. When she saw me, the tray nearly slipped. Harlon, what are you doing here? She whispered. I got straight to the point. Who's Vincent Moretti, and why did you move $3 million to the Caymans? Belle's face went white, but she tried to stay calm. I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. But I was ready. I showed her a printed email from Romy's USB. You think I don't know about your backup plan? You're working with Moretti, and I'll expose you this time for good. Belle trembled, but then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed a bitter, cutting laugh. You think you're smart, Harlon? Vincent isn't someone you cross. Touch me and you'll lose more than assets. She turned away, but I saw fear in her eyes. Belle wasn't just greedy. She was trapped in a bigger web, and I'd just poked the hornet's nest. Back in Asheville, I met with Connie and Opal. Opal, as usual, didn't hold back. Belle's gone too far. If she's tied to organized crime, we need to protect Romy and Darian first. I agreed. I hired a private security firm to watch my kids, ensuring their safety. Meanwhile, Connie contacted the FBI, providing evidence of the Cayman account and Moretti's involvement. FBI agent Karen Walsh met me at Connie's office. Mr. Creed, this is big. Moretti's been on our radar for 3 years. If Belle's a link, we need her to cooperate, but she won't do it easily. I knew I had to pressure Belle. I sent her a message through her lawyer, cooperate with the FBI, or I'll hand every email to Moretti and let him deal with you. It was a risky move, but I knew Belle feared Moretti more than me. 2 days later, she called voice panicked Harlon. I'll talk to the FBI, but you have to protect me. Vincent doesn't play games. I made no promises, only said, you put yourself on this line, save yourself now. Meanwhile, Romy began to change. She visited the guest house more often, bringing new drawings, abstract but emotional, as if trying to say something through art. One night she confessed I was wrong to trust Mom. I thought she did everything for us, but now I see she only cared about herself. Can I come back, Dad? I looked at her, seeing sincerity in her eyes. You can come back, Romy, but you have to earn it. The Creed name isn't something you just take back. She nodded, and for the first time I saw a spark of my father in her, the resolve to keep going. But then another twist hit. One night while reviewing security reports, my phone buzzed. It was Darian calling from boot camp, voice, frantic, Dad, some guys came here asking about Mom and someone named Moretti. They said I need to send a message to you. I don't know what to do. I immediately contacted the security firm demanding 24/7 protection for Darian. I flew to the training base in Virginia, meeting Darian in a small room on base. He looked scared, but held himself like a soldier. "Dad, I don't want to be part of Mom's mess, but they know who I am. They said if you don't stop, I'm in trouble." I gripped his shoulder. "I'll handle it. You focus on becoming the man you want to be." I returned and met urgently with Agent Walsh. "Moretti's sending people to threaten my son," I said. "I need him gone." Walsh nodded. "We're building a case against him, but we need Belle to testify." "She's agreed to meet us, but she's demanding witness protection." I knew Belle would use this to dodge accountability, but I had no choice. I agreed to let the FBI place her in protection on the condition she spilled everything about Moretti. The meeting between Belle and the FBI happened at a safe house in Raleigh. I wasn't allowed to attend, but Connie recounted it. Belle revealed that Moretti approached her 3 years ago when she grew bored in our marriage. He offered to help her gain financial independence in exchange for funneling money through his shell companies. She thought it was a small scam, but Moretti gradually controlled her, threatening exposure if she backed out. "She cried," Connie said, "but I'm not sure if it was remorse or an act." With Belle's testimony, the FBI launched a sweep against Moretti. He was arrested at a casino in Atlantic City, along with dozens of documents linking him to international money laundering. The story hit headlines from the New York Times to the Asheville Citizen-Times, calling it one of the decade's biggest financial crime busts. Belle was placed in witness protection, vanishing from radar. I didn't know where she was, and honestly, I didn't care. She'd chosen her path. But the drama didn't stop. A week after Moretti's arrest, I received an anonymous package at the guest house. Inside was an old leather-bound notebook, my father's handwriting on the cover. The first page read, "To Harlon, if I'm not here to tell you." I sat down, heart pounding, and read. It was my father's final journal, written in his last months in the hospital. He detailed his growing suspicions about Belle, how he tried to warn me but feared hurting me. "Son," he wrote, "legacy isn't money, but the truth you choose to protect. If Belle takes everything, remember, you still have the Creed name, and that's all you need." Tucked in the journal was a folded letter, my father's unsent note to Romy and Darian. "Grandkids," he wrote, "I know you might be swayed by empty promises, but the Creed blood in you is stronger than any lie. If you're lost, find your father. He'll show you the way." I read it over and over, feeling a new weight. My father hadn't just protected assets. He'd protected our family even when we couldn't see it. I called Romy and Darian to the guest house, showing them the letter. Romy cried, clutching it like it was her grandfather. Darian read it, then looked at me. "Dad, I want to make Grandpa proud. I'll carry the Creed name no matter what." From that moment, I knew my kids were back, not because I forgave them, but because they chose to rise from their mistakes. But then another shock hit. Opal called, voice frantic. "Harlan, someone broke into the Creed Foundation office last night. They didn't take anything but left a message on your desk. Stop or your family pays." I immediately checked security footage, a masked man, clearly a hired thug tied to Moretti. I realized that even with Moretti behind bars, his network was still active and they wanted revenge. I worked closely with the FBI, installing extra security for the foundation and guest house. I also hired a private investigation team to track the intruder. After 2 weeks, they found him, a former Moretti enforcer hired by an anonymous associate still running Moretti's operations. The FBI arrested him and through interrogation uncovered a larger plot, a plan to steal data from the Creed Foundation to extort donors. I was stunned Belle wasn't Moretti's only pawn. The foundation, my father's legacy, was the target all along. I decided to go public. At a Creed Foundation event before 700 guests from veterans to young entrepreneurs, I took the stage telling my story. "This foundation isn't just about money," I said. "It's about protecting what's right no matter who the enemy is. We've been attacked, but we don't fall." The crowd gave a standing ovation, and I saw Darian in navy dress blues smiling from the front row. Romy, just back from Europe, stood beside him holding a painting she made for the event, an abstract image of a mountain symbolizing resilience. After the event, a CNN reporter approached wanting an interview about Moretti and the foundation. I agreed on one condition: the story focused on my father's legacy, not personal drama. The piece aired nationally, and suddenly the Creed Foundation became a symbol of resilience in adversity. Donations poured in, letting us expand veteran support programs and fund scholarships for kids like Romy. But just when I thought things were stable, a letter arrived from Belle sent through the FBI as she was still in witness protection. "Harlon," she wrote, "I know you won't forgive me, but I need you to know I never meant to hurt the kids. Vincent forced me, and I was too scared to stop. If you see them, tell them I'm sorry." I tore up the letter, not replying. Belle could apologize, but consequences don't care about apologies. Romy and Darian kept growing. Darian advanced in the Navy, sending me a photo of him on a warship grinning broadly. Romy debuted her first art show at a Raleigh gallery, and I attended standing quietly in the corner, watching her explain each painting to guests. One, titled Consequences, was a dark canvas with a single beam of light. She told me later it was about me, about how I taught her mistakes can be fixed, but only through action. Opal became my key partner in the Creed Foundation, launching a new initiative, a skills training program for veterans wanting to start businesses. "This is how we keep Dad's legacy," she said. "Not just money, but opportunity." I agreed, and we held the program's launch the next summer with hundreds of veterans attending. In my speech, I mentioned my father. He taught me that legacy isn't what you leave. It's what you build every day, no matter what. But then one final drama struck. One evening, working late at the foundation office, a man walked in, tall, graying hair, eyes sharp as a blade. "Mr. Creed," he said, "I'm Anthony Russo, Vincent Moretti's lawyer. I have an offer." He placed a briefcase on the table. Opening it, inside was $5 million in cash. "Vincent wants this to end. Take the money and stop digging, otherwise you'll regret it." I stared into his eyes. "Tell Moretti I don't sell my father's legacy," Russo smirked. "You don't know who you're dealing with." He left, but I knew it wasn't over. I bolstered security, working closely with the FBI to monitor any moves from Moretti's people. Meanwhile, I got a call from Romy, now a sophomore at UNC. "Dad, I got a weird email saying I need to meet someone about family legacy." I'm scared. I told her to forward it, and it came from a fake address but mentioned Moretti. I immediately brought Romy back to Asheville, keeping her under protection. The FBI eventually tracked Russo, discovering he was a middleman for a remaining branch of Moretti's network, trying to undermine the Creed Foundation out of revenge. A raid was launched, and Russo was arrested at a New Jersey warehouse with evidence of plans to extort other charities. The story hit the evening news, and the Creed Foundation became a focal point again, but this time as a symbol of defiance. I sat in the guest house that night, looking out at the Blue Ridge Mountains, thinking of my father. He was right. Consequences are the harshest teacher, but also the fairest. Romy and Darian had found their paths, carrying the Creed name with pride. The foundation grew, touching thousands of lives, from veterans finding purpose to kids like Romy painting their futures. But just when I thought I could wrest a new secret from my father's past, emerged, threatening to upend everything I'd fought for. Folks, if you thought my story was dramatic enough, brace yourselves, because what's coming will keep you glued to the screen. One fall morning, as I prepared for a major Creed Foundation fundraiser, Opal called, her voice strange, like she'd found a bomb. "Harlon, you need to get to my office now. There's something you have to see." I drove through Asheville's golden-leafed streets, a bad feeling in my gut. At Opal's construction office, she led me to a small room where an old wooden box sat on the table. "This was found in storage from one of Dad's old projects," Opal said. "It's sealed with your name on the lid." I opened the box, heart racing. Inside was a thick stack of documents, another of my father's notebooks, and a small silver key engraved with Vault 17. The notebook began with a handwritten line, "Harlon, if you're reading this, you've passed the first test. But the true legacy lies where only you can find it." I flipped through, realizing this wasn't just a journal, it was a map to a secret my father had hidden for decades. He wrote of a secret vault built under one of Creed Development's first buildings, holding his final asset, not money, but something to ensure the Creed name endured. Opal and I read on, and what he wrote stunned us. Vault 17 didn't just hold gold or artifacts. It contained classified documents, records of business deals, contracts, even sensitive information on powerful figures in Asheville and beyond. My father called it his insurance, a way to protect the family if anyone tried to topple his legacy. But he warned, if you open the vault, you'll face new enemies. Be sure you're ready. I held the key, feeling its weight like a ton. Opal looked at me, eyes gleaming. Harlan, if this is real, it could change everything. But if someone knows about this vault, we're sitting on a landmine. I nodded, knowing finding Vault 17 wouldn't just be a treasure hunt, it would be a war. I called Connie, telling her about the box and notebook. Harlan, she said, if these documents involve powerful people, you're stepping into a dangerous swamp. Your father didn't hide this without reason. I decided to find Vault 17, but kept it top secret, sharing only with Opal and Connie. We followed clues in the notebook leading to an old office building in downtown Asheville, one of my father's first projects. Now a small commercial hub, the building hid Vault 17 in its basement behind a false wall per his notes. Opal and I went at night with flashlights and old blueprints. After hours of searching, we found a steel door hidden behind a storage rack with a lock matching the silver key. Opening it, adrenaline surged. Inside was a small concrete room with a large safe in the center. I entered the code from the notebook, my birth date, and the safe clicked open. Inside were dozens of folders, each with detailed documents, contracts with local politicians, records of secret loans, even a list of debtors my father had helped, but who could turn on him? But what stopped me cold was a separate envelope labeled "For Harlan, the truth about Belle." I opened it and my heart skipped. It was a report from a private investigator my father hired 10 years ago when he first suspected Belle. The report revealed Belle wasn't just a greedy wife, she had a hidden past. Before meeting me, she worked for a Chicago financial firm suspected of involvement in a scam, but cleared for lack of evidence. My father knew, but stayed silent, hoping I'd see it myself. Son, he wrote in an attached note, I didn't want to ruin your marriage, but Belle isn't who you think. If she betrays you, use this to protect the family. I felt the ground collapse beneath me. Belle hadn't just deceived me in marriage, she'd lived a lie from the start. I gave the documents to Connie, who shook her head. Harlan, this could reopen the case against Belle, even in witness protection. But if you go public, the debtors on your father's list won't be happy. I knew she was right. The names in the documents, councilmen, bankers, even a judge, were Asheville's power players. Exposing them would make the whole city my enemy. But then another twist rocked me. One morning at the foundation office, Agent Walsh called. Harlan, we just got a report from witness protection. Belle's gone. I was floored. Gone. What do you mean? Walsh explained. She left the safe house in Seattle 3 days ago, no trace. We think she might be trying to contact someone from Moretti's network. Or worse, she's coming for you. I immediately tightened security for Rami and Darian, asking the FBI to monitor any unusual activity in Asheville. I also hired a private investigation team to find Belle. Meanwhile, I got an anonymous text sent through an encrypted app. Creed, she's coming. She knows about Vault 17. A chill hit me. How did Belle know about the vault? Only I, Opal, and Connie knew the secret. Unless there was a traitor in my inner circle. I started suspecting everyone, even Connie. She'd been loyal to my father for decades, but what if someone paid more? I set a trap. I told Connie I planned to reveal Vault 17's documents at a major foundation event, but didn't specify the date. I also accidentally let slip to Opal that I'd moved the documents to a bank safe. Then I waited. 3 days later, Opal called frantic. Harlan, someone broke into my company's storage last night. They took old blueprints, including the one for the building with Vault 17. I knew it wasn't random. I checked Opal's security footage and saw a familiar figure, not Belle, but a man I'd seen at Belle's housewarming, one of Knox's investors. His name was Greg Larson, a local real estate broker, and per Vault 17's documents, he owed my father a fortune from a deal 20 years ago. I confronted Larson at his office, a sleek glass building in downtown Asheville. Greg, I said, I know you're working for Belle, and I know about your debt to my father. Larson laughed, but his eyes were nervous. Harlan, you're imagining things. I don't know anything about Belle. I tossed a copy of a contract from Vault 17 onto his desk, an agreement he'd signed, promising my father $2 million he never paid. The FBI would love this, I said. Larson paled and finally cracked. Belle contacted me last month. She said she knew about a treasure of your father's, and if I helped, she'd split it. She's in Asheville, Harlan, but she's not acting alone. Larson revealed Belle was working with former Moretti associates, aiming to use Vault 17's documents to blackmail Asheville's elite. They'd set up a temporary base in an abandoned warehouse outside town. I alerted Agent Walsh and the FBI raided it. They found Belle in the warehouse with 3 armed men and a laptop containing copies of some Vault 17 documents. Apparently, Belle had hired a hacker to breach Connie's storage system, getting vault details before vanishing from witness protection. Belle was arrested this time with heavier charges, conspiracy to extort and ties to organized crime. In the interrogation room, she glared at me through the one-way glass eyes full of hate. "You never understood Harlon," she told Walsh. "I did it all to escape your and your father's shadow. I deserved more. I turned away, done listening." Belle had chosen her path, and now she'd pay not 2 years, but possibly a decade. But the drama didn't end. As the FBI investigated, they uncovered a bombshell. One of Vault 17's documents mentioned a secret fund my father set up not in the US, but in Switzerland. The fund held $10 million left by my father with a note for the Creed. Future generations only if they prove their worth. I was floored. My father hadn't just safeguarded the present. He'd laid a foundation for the future, but with a stringent condition. I called Romy and Darian, telling them about the Swiss fund. "This isn't a reward," I said. "It's a challenge. If you want to touch it, you have to live up to the Creed name, not just carry it, but live for it." Romy nodded, eyes bright. "I want to do it, Dad. Not for the money, but for Grandpa." Darian, now a Navy corporal, said, "I'll prove it, Dad. Not just for him, but for you." But then one final secret from Vault 17 shook me. In a forgotten folder, I found a letter from my mother written before she died when I was young. "Ernie," she wrote, "if I don't make it, tell Harlon I love him and that he'll be the one to keep the family's fire." Attached was a small gold ring engraved Creed Forever. I slipped it on, feeling a new connection to my mother, whom I barely remembered. I decided to make the ring a symbol of the Creed Foundation, crafting smaller versions to award veterans and young entrepreneurs who completed our programs. At the Foundation's 1-year anniversary, I stood before 1,000 guests, sharing my mother's story, my father's and my own. "The Creed name isn't money or power," I said. "It's about standing tall even when the world tries to pull you down." As I gave the first ring to a veteran who'd started a small business with our help, I saw Romy and Darian in the crowd, clapping, eyes shining with pride. But just when I thought I'd found peace, a man approached after the event. "Mr. Creed," he said, voice low. "I'm Jonathan Pierce, grandson of one of your father's debtors. I know about Vault 17 and I want a deal." He revealed his grandfather, a former Asheville mayor, had borrowed from my father to cover a political scandal. "If you release those documents, my family's ruined," Pierce said. "Dick, I offer $20 million to destroy them." I looked at him, anger rising. "My father didn't build a legacy to sell," I said. "Tell your family to prepare, because truth doesn't negotiate." Pierce left, but I knew he wouldn't stop. I met with Connie and Opal, deciding to release some Vault 17 documents, only those safe for the innocent, to send a message that the Creeds don't fear. We chose the Asheville Citizen-Times for an investigative piece exposing my father's secret loans to politicians without naming names. The article shocked the city, and the Foundation became a lightning rod. Some called me a hero, others a wrecking ball. Meanwhile, Romy came to me with an idea. "Dad, I want to make a documentary about the Creed Foundation, about Grandpa, about what we've been through. I think it'll inspire people." I agreed, and Romy worked with a team of UNC students filming in Asheville, interviewing veterans and young entrepreneurs. The film Creed Forever premiered at a local film festival, becoming a sensation, picked up by Netflix for streaming. It didn't just tell our family's story. It spread a message about consequences, resilience, and the power of truth. But the drama wasn't over. One night, reviewing the documentary's final cut, my phone buzzed. It was Agent Walsh. "Harlon, we just uncovered a new plot. A hacker group possibly tied to Moretti's network is trying to breach the Creed Foundation's financial system. They want to steal donor data to sell on the dark web." I immediately worked with a cybersecurity firm, setting up a honeypot to lure the hackers. After a week, we caught a signal, a hacker in Eastern Europe hired by an unknown figure in Asheville. The FBI traced it, finding the mastermind was Jonathan Pierce, retaliating for my refusal of his deal. Pierce was arrested, and the story hit. CNN plot to attack charity thwarted. The foundation, instead of being harmed, gained even more community support. New donors emerged from Silicon Valley tech firms to local Asheville families, all wanting to be part of the legacy my father built. I stood in the foundation office, looking out at the city, feeling for the first time that I'd truly made my father proud. But then one final secret from my father's past surfaced. One afternoon, cleaning the guest house, I found a small box hidden under the floorboards, another gift from my father. Inside was a handwritten letter and an old Marine Corps badge like the one I'd worn. Harlan, he wrote, when you read this, you're the man I always knew you'd be. This badge was mine from when I was young, fighting for what's right. Now it's yours. Wear it and remember creeds don't fall. I pinned the badge on, feeling a new strength. I called Romy and Darian, telling them about their grandfather's final gift. Romy, now a rising filmmaker, said, Dad, I want to make a sequel documentary about this badge, about everything we've learned. Darian, recently promoted, nodded. I'll help, Dad. This is how we keep the Creed fire burning. My story continues with new challenges, new enemies, and new victories. The Creed Foundation is now a beacon in Asheville, proof that legacy isn't what you inherit, but what you fight to keep. I know Belle, wherever she is, lives with her consequences. Romy and Darian, with the Creed name in their hearts, are building their own futures. And I, Harlan Creed, keep walking, carrying my father's lesson: justice is consequences. And consequences are the only teacher that never lies. I stood there in the modest guest house overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains, my father's Marine badge clutched in my hand, feeling like he was right beside me, whispering that the fight wasn't over. The Creed Foundation was now a blazing light in Asheville, but I knew the brighter the light, the more shadows try to creep in. What happened next was a series of shocks, buried secrets, and new enemies emerging from the past, forcing me to fight not just for my father's legacy, but for the very soul of my family. Folks, if you thought my story had peaked with drama, hold on to your seats, because what's coming is a roller coaster of intensity. Don't look away, because every second from here will leave you stunned. It all started on a winter evening with light snow blanketing Asheville, creating a deceptively peaceful scene. I was reviewing the Creed Foundation's financials when I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was cold, with an Eastern European accent. Mr. Creed, you've gone too far. Vault 17 was your mistake. Stop, or Romy will never be safe. Before I could reply, the call cut off. My heart raced. Romy, now in Raleigh, had just started filming the sequel to her documentary about the Foundation. How did this person know about Vault 17, and why target my daughter? I immediately called Romy, ordering her to return to Asheville and stay in the guest house until things were clear. She protested, saying she didn't want to pause her film, but my tone left no room for argument. Romy, this isn't a game. Come home now. I also contacted FBI agent Karen Walsh, telling her about the threat. Harlan Walsh said, we think this is a remnant of Moretti's network. Even with Vincent locked up, some loyalists want revenge. Vault 17 might hold information they don't want exposed. I sent Walsh copies of safe documents from the vault, withholding the most sensitive ones, and asked her to increase protection for Romy and Darian. While waiting for Romy, I checked security cameras around the guest house and Foundation office. One clip chilled me: a black SUV. No plates had parked near the office 3 nights in a row, lingering briefly before vanishing. I sent the footage to Walsh, who confirmed, this matches the description of a European crime group tied to Moretti. They specialize in extortion and assassination. Harlan, be careful. Romy arrived in Asheville the next morning, looking anxious but stubborn. Dad, I don't want to live in fear, she said, dropping her bag on the guest house floor. I want to finish the film. It matters to me, to Grandpa. I looked at my daughter, seeing my father's determination in her eyes, but also the naivety of a 19-year-old who didn't grasp how cruel the world could be. Romy, I said, the film can wait, but if you're in danger, I'll never forgive myself. She nodded, but I knew she wasn't fully convinced. That same day, Opal arrived with shocking news. Harlan, I got a report from my construction crew. They're renovating an old Creed development lot outside town, and guess what they found? A second vault smaller than Vault 17, hidden under a warehouse foundation. I was stunned. My father never mentioned another vault. Opal showed me a blueprint indicating the vault was built concurrently with Vault 17, but unlisted in official records. What do you think? Opal asked. What else was Dad hiding? Opal and I went to the site immediately with a private security team for safety. The second vault was smaller, just a concrete room with an old safe. I used a code from my father's notebook, this time his and my mother's wedding date, and the safe opened. Inside wasn't documents, but an intricately carved wooden box containing a third notebook and an old cassette tape. My heart sank. My father, always planning, had clearly meant for me to find this. Back at the guest house, I opened the notebook. It was brief, a few pages, but each line hit like a punch. My father wrote about an incident 30 years ago when he stumbled onto a corruption ring involving high-ranking North Carolina officials and an international crime syndicate. He didn't participate, but kept evidence recordings of conversations, transaction records as leverage to protect the family. Harlon, he wrote, if you find this, you're being hunted. The cassette holds truth that could topple powerful people, but it'll make you a target. Be cautious. I played the cassette on an old player from the guest house. My father's deep, clear voice filled the room, recording a secret meeting with a man named Carver who revealed the syndicate's infiltration of state government. At the tape's end, my father said, "If I disappear, Harlon, use this. But only if you're ready to pay the price." I turned it off, feeling the world's weight on my shoulders. My father hadn't just built an empire. He'd held secrets that could shake a state. I called Connie, telling her about the second vault and cassette. "Harlon," she said, "if this is real, you're holding a nuclear bomb. Some people on that tape or their kids are still in power. You need to hand this to the FBI, but carefully, or they'll try to silence you." I agreed, but first I wanted to protect Romy and Darian. I texted Darian asking him to report any odd activity at his Navy base. He replied, "Dad, all good, but last week a guy asked about you claiming to be a reporter." I said nothing. I knew it wasn't a reporter. Then another twist nearly broke me. One evening, as Romy and I ate dinner in the guest house, a bullet shattered the window, grazing my shoulder and embedding in the wall. Romy screamed, and I pulled her to the floor, calling security. They arrived in minutes, but the sniper was gone. Police found a shell casing on a nearby hill with a note attached. Vault 17 was a warning. Stop, Creed. I held Romy, feeling fear for the first time, not for me, but for her. I moved Romy to an FBI safe house, asking Opal to stay with her. I met with Walsh, giving her the cassette and copies of the second vault's documents. "Harlon," she said, "will launch a federal investigation. But I warn you, the syndicate in that tape may have insiders in the FBI. Stay completely silent." I nodded, but knew I couldn't just wait. I had to act. I hired a team of ex-CIA investigators to track the syndicate. After 2 weeks, they found a lead, a shell company in Miami linked to Carver, a former North Carolina senator who vanished 20 years ago per the documents. The company, Blue Horizon, was funding a political campaign in Asheville led by a young candidate, Michael Carver, Carver's grandson. I was floored. Carver's grandson was running for mayor, and if he won, he could use his power to bury his grandfather's secrets. I dug deeper, learning Michael Carver met Belle before she vanished from witness protection. A Seattle bar's security camera caught them talking, and per my investigators, Belle may have given Carver Vault 17 details for protection. I confronted Michael at a campaign event, a lavish ballroom filled with wealthy donors. "Michael," I said, voice calm but icy, "I know about Blue Horizon and what your grandfather told my father." "Drop out or I go public." Carver laughed, but his eyes panicked. "Mr. Creed, you're playing a dangerous game. My grandfather's dead and I know nothing about what you're saying." But I was prepared. I sent a copy of the cassette audio to an investigative reporter at the Washington Post, asking her to hold it until I signaled. I also worked with Walsh to trap Carver. The FBI leaked fake intel that I'd destroyed Vault 17's documents, making Carver overconfident. He hosted a massive fundraiser inviting Asheville's elite, and I got an invite, clearly a setup to confront me publicly. I attended wearing the same black suit from my father's funeral, feeling like a warrior entering the final battle. Carver greeted me with a fake smile, but I saw tension in his eyes. Mid-event, as he spoke about Asheville's future, I took the stage, grabbing the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, I said I have a story about Asheville's past you need to hear." I briefly outlined Vault 17, the cassette, and the Carver family's ties to corruption. The crowd murmured, and Carver tried to interrupt. "This is slander, Creed's a liar." But I was ready. I played a cassette audio clip over the speakers, my father and Carver discussing bribes. The ballroom went silent. Carver paled, and before he could react, Agent Walsh entered with an FBI team cuffing him for obstruction of justice and syndicate ties. The crowd erupted, phones recording, and the news spread across social media in minutes. Carver's campaign collapsed, and Blue Horizon was investigated, exposing a corruption network from Asheville to Miami. But the drama didn't stop. As the FBI dug into Blue Horizon, they found a bombshell before her final arrest. Belle had hidden a hard drive in a Charlotte bank safe deposit box. The drive held video diaries documenting every deal with Moretti Carver and others. In one video, she looked at the camera, eyes read, "Harlon, if you see this, I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you or the kids. I was trapped and thought this was the only way." I watched, feeling anger mixed with pity. Belle wasn't a victim, but not a monster. She was a woman who chose the wrong path and was now paying. The FBI used the drive to dismantle Moretti's remaining network, arresting dozens nationwide. Belle, now in a federal prison, refused to meet me when I offered to talk. I respected her choice, but sent a short letter through her lawyer, Belle. "I don't forgive, but I hope you find peace. The kids are fine, and they carry the Creed name with pride." I got no reply and didn't expect one. Romy finished the documentary sequel, Creed Forever: The Legacy, which premiered at Sundance, winning Best Documentary. It detailed Vault 17, the cassette, and how our family overcame darkness to keep the Creed fire burning. In the final scene, Romy stood at her grandfather's grave saying, "Consequences are a harsh teacher, but they teach us how to live." I watched at the premiere, eyes misty with pride. Darian, now a rising Navy officer, returned to Asheville on leave, bringing a surprise: he was engaged to Emily, a fellow service member who shared his values of honor and duty. At a family dinner in the guest house, Emily shared that she grew up hearing about the legend of Ernie Creed from her father, a veteran my father had helped. "He's why I enlisted," she said. I smiled, feeling the circle close. But then one final secret from my father's past emerged, as if he was still testing me from beyond. A Swiss lawyer contacted me saying the $10 million fund my father left had an additional condition hidden in a document unsealed 5 years after his death. The condition: I had to find a woman named Lila, someone my father met late in life, and deliver a sealed envelope to her. The lawyer didn't know who Lila was, only a clue: she once worked at an Asheville hospital. I searched for Lila, tracking hospital records and interviewing former nurses. After months, I found her, Lila Thompson, now a 70-year-old woman living in a modest home outside Asheville. When I arrived, Lila smiled as if expecting me. "I knew Ernie would send you," she said. I gave her the envelope and she opened it, revealing a letter and a photo of my father and Lila Young laughing in a park. The letter explained that Lila was his first love, but they parted due to family circumstances. "Ernie wanted me to know he never forgot," Lila said, tears in her eyes. "And he wanted you to know, Harlon, that family isn't just blood. It's who you choose to love." Lila gave me a gift, my father's old pocket watch engraved with Creed, love, and consequences. I wore it, feeling him closer than ever. Lila also shared that my father secretly funded scholarships for nurses' children at the hospital, another legacy he never boasted about. I decided to expand the Creed Foundation, adding a scholarship program named for Lila, honoring her and my father's quiet kindness. But the drama wasn't done. One morning, preparing for the Lila Scholarship launch, Opal called frantic: "Harlon, there's a data breach at the foundation. Someone leaked our donor list with personal info to the dark web." I worked with the cybersecurity firm tracing the breach to a new employee, Sarah Blake. When confronted, Sarah confessed she was hired by a political rival of Michael Carver, seeking revenge for the cassette incident. Sarah was fired and turned over to the FBI, but the damage was done. Some donors pulled out, and the foundation faced a trust crisis. I held a press conference, standing before the media and apologizing to donors. "The Creed Foundation isn't perfect," I said, "but we don't fall. We'll fix this and we'll be stronger." I announced a compensation fund for affected donors, and surprisingly, Asheville's community responded with greater support. New donors, from small businesses to tech billionaires, pledged help, turning crisis into opportunity. Romy and Darian stepped up, helping rebuild community trust. Romy held a charity art exhibit, donating all painting sales to the compensation fund. Darian, on Navy leave, spoke to veterans at the foundation, sharing his story of reclaiming the Creed name. Emily, Darian's fiancée, volunteered designing an app to connect veterans with job opportunities. But then one last shock from Belle's past hit. A private investigator hired by the FBI to track Moretti's old associates found a secret Swiss account, not my father's, but one Belle set up under a false name before her final arrest. It held $5 million with a digital note for Romy and Darian if they forgive me. I met with the kids, showing them the note. Romy shook her head. "I don't want Mom's money. It's dirty." Darian agreed. "We'll build our own future, Dad. We don't need it." I turned the account over to the FBI requesting the funds compensate Moretti and Belle's victims. The decision made headlines, and the Creed Foundation was again hailed for integrity. I stood at the Lila Scholarship launch looking at hundreds of young faces, children of nurses, veterans, entrepreneurs, and felt my father smiling somewhere. Romy stood beside me holding a new painting, a blazing fire on a mountain titled Creed Forever. Darian in dress blues hugged Emily, and Opal slapped my shoulder. Dad would be proud, Harlon. Spring 2026. Arrived in Asheville like a promise of rebirth, cherry blossoms blooming along the streets, draping the city in soft pink. I stood on the Creed Foundation office balcony, looking down at the bustling crowds, feeling a rare peace after years of relentless battles. My father's Marine badge rested in my pocket. The Creed Forever gold ring gleamed on my hand, and his pocket watch ticked steadily, reminding me that time, like consequences, never stops. My story, with its secrets, betrayals, and triumphs, had brought me here a conclusion, but also a new beginning. Folks, if you've ridden this wild drama with me, get ready for the finale because it'll stir your heart and leave a lesson you won't forget. After the data breach and the collapse of the final plot tied to Belle, the Creed Foundation didn't just survive, it thrived. The Lila Scholarship Program, named for my father's first love, awarded over 200 scholarships to children of nurses, veterans, and young entrepreneurs across North Carolina. Each time I handed out a scholarship, I saw my father's eyes in those young faces, determination, resilience, and a fierce belief in the future. But I knew his legacy wasn't just numbers or shiny buildings. It was about passing on the Creed fire, a flame Romy and Darian had learned to keep burning. Romy, now a 20-year-old filmmaker with big promise, turned Creed Forever into an inspiring brand. After the sequel's Sundance success, she got an offer from a major LA studio for a $1 million series on families overcoming adversity. But Romy turned it down, staying in Asheville to start a nonprofit Creed Studios training underprivileged teens in filmmaking. One afternoon, she came to the guest house with a new painting, an abstract portrait of my father, bold lines, and a spark in his eyes. Dad, Romy said, I want this in the foundation office. Grandpa's why I do all this. I hugged my daughter, feeling for the first time that she wasn't just my kid, but a woman carrying the Creed legacy her way. Darian, a rising Navy officer, returned to Asheville for his wedding to Emily. The ceremony was at a small farm outside town, the Blue Ridge Mountains as a backdrop. As Darian stood before me in his dress blues, he gripped my hand, voice steady. Dad, I learned from you and Grandpa that family isn't given, it's earned. I'll make Grandpa proud, and you too. I nodded, speechless, and as he slipped the ring onto Emily's finger, I saw the Creed Forever ring on his, a copy of my mother's, my wedding gift to him. Emily, beaming, whispered to me, after Harlon, Darian always said you were his hero. Now I see why. I smiled, but knew the real hero was my father, who laid the foundation for it all. Opal, my never-quitting sister, kept running the veteran skills training at the foundation. She also started a personal project, a book about our father, Ernie Creed, the man who built a legacy. One evening at the guest house, she handed me the first draft. Harlon, she said, this isn't just about Dad. It's about us, how we kept our promise to him no matter what. I read it, each page taking me back to days when Dad taught me to shoot on the family land, or nights he wrote notes planning to protect us. Closing the book, I told Opal Dad would want this in everyone's hands. She nodded, and we decided to use book profits for more scholarships. But just when I thought things were settled, a letter from the FBI arrived, carrying a final secret that shook me. It revealed that Belle from prison had written a 50-page confession sent to Agent Walsh before her transfer to a maximum security facility. In it, Belle described a figure she called the Shadow, a mysterious mastermind behind Moretti and Carver, pulling strings from afar. Harlon, she wrote, I don't know his real name, but he knows about Vault 17, the cassette, and the Swiss fund. He let me live because I was useful, but he won't leave you alone. Be careful. Reading it, I felt a cold wind. Who was the Shadow, and why was he still after my family? I met Walsh at a small Raleigh diner where she gave me a classified file. Harlon, she said, we suspect the Shadow is a retired high-ranking official, possibly with lingering influence in politics and crime. We lack hard evidence, but if he's targeting you, brace for a long fight. I nodded, but inwardly vowed I wouldn't live in fear. Back in Asheville, I met with Romy, Darian, and Opal, telling them about the Shadow. We've faced Moretti, Carver, and Bell, I said. If the Shadow wants a fight, he'll see the Creed family doesn't break. We fortified the Foundation's security, installing cutting-edge surveillance and hiring cybercrime experts. I also contacted the Washington Post reporter, asking her to keep digging into the Shadow, promising any needed Vault 17 documents. Meanwhile, I planned the Foundation's biggest event yet, a 5-year anniversary celebration with over 2,000 guests, from veterans to international donors. On stage, I looked out at the crowd and shared our family's story, not just the battles, but the lessons. Consequences, I said, are the harshest teacher, but also the guide. They teach us that legacy isn't what you hold. It's what you build every day with honesty and courage. As I stepped off the stage, Romy rushed to hug me, Darian and Emily clapped from the front row, and Opal raised her glass, winking. In the crowd, I saw Lila Thompson, now frail but smiling, wearing the Creed Forever ring I'd given her. I also saw new faces, scholarship recipients, veterans who'd started businesses, families we'd helped. It was the moment I knew my father's legacy hadn't just survived. It was thriving stronger than ever. But I'm not naive. The Shadow is still out there, and I know one day he'll surface. I keep copies of all Vault 17 documents in a secret safe, and I've trained Romy and Darian to face danger as my father taught me. Each night I stand at his grave in the cemetery, reporting like a soldier to his commander. Dad, I say the legacy's safe. I kept my promise. But if there's another fight, I'm ready. The wind carries the scent of cherry blossoms, and I feel him smile. My story ends here. But the Creed family's journey goes on through Romy Darian and generations to come. I, Harlan Creed, learned that family isn't just blood, but those who stand with you even when the sky falls. Legacy isn't money or power. It's the fire you pass on through any storm. And consequences. They're the only teacher that never lies, and I'll carry that lesson to my last day.